What if I told you that a clothing company, like less than a year old, managed to hijack a priceless Van Gogh painting,
Right?
faked a museum exhibition,
Oh, yeah.
and triggered this massive global viral frenzy, all just to sell a cotton hoodie?
It sounds completely made up when you say it out loud.
It really does. But welcome to the Brand Hub. Today we are beginning a deep dive into a singular case study from Vivir Clothing that did exactly that.
Yeah, it is a fascinating campaign.
We are looking at their launch campaign, which totally blurred the line between high art and internet hype. And we've got this great stack of sources in front of us today.
We do.
Everything from digital marketing case studies to consumer psychology reports and even some heavy-hitting media theory papers focused strictly on this streetwear brand, Vivir Clothing.
And for anyone listening right now, unpacking this specific case study is incredibly relevant to how you navigate the digital world every single day.
Absolutely.
I mean, Vivir's the Starry Site campaign, it's just a masterclass in how modern brands manipulate perception.
Yeah, it really is.
It gives you this literal roadmap for understanding how companies, well, how they hijack cultural symbols and pull on these invisible psychological levers to make you care deeply about something as simple as an online store opening.
Right, because at the end of the day, it is just a website launching.
Exactly. But by the time we finish sorting through these sources today, you are going to see the hidden machinery that actually drives social media hype.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the sheer audacity of this campaign is what caught my eye immediately.
Yeah.
We are looking at a promotional rollout for an August 29th website launch. And somehow, Vivir managed to fuse the prestige of fine art, the absolute frenzy of streetwear drop culture, and hyper-targeted digital marketing into this massive cultural moment.
It really is a perfect storm of branding. I mean, to truly understand how Vivir engineered this tidal wave of attention, we really need to start by looking at the visual anchor of their entire campaign.
The painting.
Right. Everything they built originated from one very specific image.
So let's establish the brand's baseline first. The name Vivir comes from the Spanish word meaning to live.
Right.
And their whole brand ethos, at least according to the marketing case studies we're looking at, is about living boldly, being relentlessly authentic, and wearing your story on your sleeve.
Yeah, standard streetwear manifesto stuff.
Exactly. But for this specific launch campaign, they needed an image that screamed bold creativity to the masses. So they decided to borrow one of the most recognizable, universally revered paintings in human history.
Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night.
Yeah, but they go far beyond just borrowing it, though. They completely integrate their corporate identity into the artwork.
They really do. It's aggressive.
They take that iconic image, the turbulent swirling sky, the intensely glowing yellow stars, that unforgettable deep blue palette that we all recognize from, like, 7th grade art history classes.
Yeah, it's ingrained in us.
Right. And they boldly superimpose their own logo, just the word Vivir, right over the center of the painting.
Just slapped right on top.
Yeah. And then in the caption of the post, they execute this clever little pun. Instead of the Starry Night, they call it the Starry Site.
Very clever.
Specifically, tying the emotional weight of the artwork directly to the launch of their new e-commerce website.
Right.
To me, this feels exactly like sampling a classic 80s track in a modern hip-hop song.
Oh, that is a great analogy.
You get all the instant credibility, the nostalgia, the emotional resonance of the original masterpiece, but you remix it to make it feel entirely fresh and relevant for a new, younger audience.
That analogy hits the nail on the head, actually. In the media theory papers we reviewed, there is an academic framework for that exact strategy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is called intertextuality.
Intertextuality.
Right. Essentially, intertextuality explores how a brand or a creator borrows elements from a well-known text, an image, or a cultural product to create an entirely new layer of meaning.
Wait, so by pasting their logo over Van Gogh, are they basically trying to, like, absorb his genius? How does that actually work on the consumer?
It works entirely through association.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this campaign is a textbook example of postmodernism,
Right.
specifically drawing on the theories of the French sociologist Jean Baudrillard. Baudrillard argued that in our hypersaturated modern media landscape, original creation is incredibly rare.
Everything is a remix.
Exactly. We are constantly recycling, remixing, and reconstructing existing images from culture. So Vivir is taking a historically significant cultural text, a painting that usually lives behind velvet ropes in a climate-controlled gallery.
Right.
And they are pulling it into the gritty, fast-paced world of streetwear.
So it changes how the person scrolling on their phone views the clothing itself.
Fundamentally, yes. I mean, the Starry Night is universally understood as a symbol of profound imagination, deep emotion, raw artistic individuality.
Yeah.
When Vivir physically places their logo over those swirling stars, they are making a psychological suggestion to you, the consumer.
Like a subconscious link.
Right. They're implying that buying their clothes equates to buying that same imagination and artistic uniqueness. It elevates the product from a mass-produced piece of cotton to an expression of high culture.
It is wild how quickly our brains just make that leap without us even noticing. We see Van Gogh, we see the Vivir logo, and our subconscious just decides, this streetwear brand is deep and artistic.
It happens in milliseconds.
But here is where it gets really interesting. It is not just about slapping a logo on a famous painting. It is about how you physically present that remixed art to the world to make it feel incredibly important.
Right. The environmental framing of the artwork is doing just as much heavy lifting as the Van Gogh reference itself.
And the framing Vivir used was incredibly cinematic. According to the campaign breakdown, they released a promotional video that opens with these dramatic, sweeping camera shots outside the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, in New York City.
Setting the stage.
Exactly. Then the video cuts to a tight close-up of this remixed Vivir Starry Night artwork. But it is accompanied by all these rapid, flashing camera light effects.
Right.
Totally mimicking the chaotic, blinding flashes of paparazzi photography.
That combination of visuals creates a very specific, highly engineered atmosphere.
But wait, I have to push back here.
Okay.
I am looking at the details of the shoot. And they're filming outside MoMA.
Yeah.
They're literally on the sidewalk, not inside the galleries. Isn't this just a clever optical illusion to borrow cultural weight they haven't actually earned? I mean, they didn't actually get their hoodies exhibited in one of the most prestigious museums in the world.
What's fascinating here is, well, I wouldn't call it an illusion as much as I'd call it a calculated projection.
Projection.
Yeah. In the fashion industry, perception literally is the product. To understand why this sidewalk projection works so flawlessly, we have to look at the study of signs and symbols.
Which is?
It's known as semiotics, pioneered by Roland Barthes.
Okay, break that down for me, because right now I'm just thinking about, like literal street signs.
Fair enough. Think of semiotics as the science of how we derive meaning from the visual world around us. Barthes argued that everything we see in media is a sign, and those signs are loaded with deeply ingrained cultural meanings.
Okay, I follow.
Let's look at the specific signs Vivir deployed here. Sign number 1 is the Museum of Modern Art itself.
Right.
What does MoMA signify to the average person? It signifies elite, high culture, undeniable artistic prestige, and curation of global masterpieces.
Yeah, totally.
Sign number 2 involves those flashing paparazzi cameras. What do those flashes signify?
They scream fame.
Exactly. Fame, celebrity status, immense public importance, and overwhelming demand.
So they are basically stacking these heavy cultural symbols on top of each other.
They are. And by blending the prestige of the museum with the frenzy of the paparazzi, Barthes would argue that Vivir is constructing a myth.
A myth?
Yeah. They are building a myth that their streetwear brand is not just a clothing company, but a highly anticipated cultural phenomenon. And there's a really powerful secondary psychological effect here, too.
What's that?
It ties into Pierre Bourdieu's concept of cultural capital.
Cultural capital. I have heard that term. It's like social currency, right?
Yeah, think of it like a status game where the currency isn't money, but taste and knowledge.
Oh, like when someone casually mentions they're reading David Foster Wallace at a dinner party?
Exactly. Or why people brag about knowing an indie band before they got famous on TikTok.
Right.
Bourdieu argued that possessing knowledge of high culture gives you elevated social status. So when a consumer watches this Vivir ad and recognizes the Van Gogh reference or successfully identifies the exterior of MoMA,
They feel smart.
exactly. They feel an immediate boost in their own cultural capital. They feel sophisticated and educated simply for getting the reference. Vivir makes the audience feel smart, which instantly endears the brand to them.
That is genuinely manipulative, but also brilliant. They flatter the listener's intelligence while simultaneously tricking them into believing a hoodie is a museum-worthy artifact.
It's very effective.
But okay, once Vivir has established this prestigious elite vibe, the case study highlights that they run into a massive marketing dilemma.
Yeah, it is the core tension of the modern fashion industry.
The problem of scale versus exclusivity.
Exactly.
Because how do you get a massive viral crowd of people to actually visit your website and buy your products without ruining that carefully crafted air of being rare, elite, and untouchable?
It is the ultimate tightrope walk. A brand needs broad visibility and high sales volume to survive financially. But the second you become too accessible or, too mainstream, you completely lose your cool factor. You lose the very thing that made people want you in the first place.
So to walk that tightrope, Vivir utilizes classic drop culture mechanics. They don't just quietly open a 24/7 online store.
No, not at all.
Instead, they pin the launch to a very specific date and time, August 29th. They manufacture an intense sense of scarcity. And by calling the campaign the Starry Site, they turn the website into a branded universe.
Yeah.
It ceases to be a shop. It becomes a destination.
An event.
An event you don't want to miss.
Exactly. But the absolute most fascinating part of this campaign is what they did with their own tagline.
Oh, the slogan reversal. It is arguably the smartest psychological trigger in the entire campaign.
Right. Because Vivir's usual brand slogan, the mantra their followers know and expect, is keep it exclusive.
Yeah.
It fits their whole underground elite vibe perfectly. But for this specific launch caption on August 29th, they reversed it. They explicitly wrote, don't keep it exclusive.
And it's so good.
It completely breaks their own pattern. To me, it is like the bouncer at the most exclusive, impossible to get into nightclub in town, suddenly dropping the velvet rope, stepping aside, and telling everyone in line to call their friends.
Yeah.
It completely shatters your expectations.
And shattering expectations is the only way to capture attention in a digital economy.
But why does that work on a biological level? Like, why don't people just ignore the caption like every other ad while they are doom scrolling through their feeds?
It comes down to cognitive dissonance. When you are scrolling through social media, your brain is largely on autopilot.
Sure.
You are actively filtering out marketing messages. But when a brand you follow suddenly contradicts its own core identity, when the Keep It Exclusive brand says don't keep it exclusive,
It creates a glitch.
a literal glitch in your brain's pattern recognition. Your thumb physically stops scrolling because your brain needs a second to resolve the contradiction.
It forces you to pay attention.
It does. And once they have your attention, the reversal operates on a deeper psychological level. It maintains the brand's core identity of rarity because you only notice the contradiction if you already know they usually preach exclusivity.
Right.
But at the same time, it acts as a highly effective call to action for virality. They are essentially whispering to their fans like, we are usually a strictly guarded secret, but just for today, we are giving you special permission to tell everyone you know.
And that feeling of special permission is what drives the share button. This ties perfectly into the uses and gratifications theory in media studies.
Okay.
This theory completely changed how we look at audiences. It asks a simple question. What do people actually get out of consuming and sharing media?
Because we aren't just passive zombies staring at screens.
Exactly.
We use media as a tool for our own purposes.
Precisely. By telling their followers, don't keep it exclusive, Vivir is offering them a very specific gratification, social interaction, and elevated status.
Oh, I see.
The followers get to act as benevolent gatekeepers who are sharing a highly coveted secret. When a user shares this launch with their friends, they gain social currency within their own circle.
They get to be the cool person.
Yes. The cool person who knows about the highly anticipated artistic streetwear drop. It builds a powerful sense of community and inclusiveness, while ironically still relying entirely on the premise of an exclusive event.
It is a masterclass in having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah.
I mean, they look elite, but they act viral.
Yeah.
They borrow Van Gogh's historical prestige. They fake MoMA's institutional endorsement with cinematic camera angles on a public sidewalk, and they manipulate the psychology of drop culture to drive massive website traffic.
It's all very calculated.
But this brings us to the reality check of the sources we were looking at.
Yeah, this is the best part.
Because all of this artistic prestige, all this manufactured hype, leads to a very surprising truth about the company behind the curtain.
The physical reality of the brand is quite a stark contrast to the cinematic myth they successfully built online.
It really is staggering. When you actually look at the business fundamentals in these case studies, despite this massive, culturally significant presentation that looks like it belongs alongside global luxury houses that have been around for a century. Right. Vivir Clothing Ltd. is a very, very new company.
Very new.
The incorporation documents show they were only registered in Kent, England in September 2025. This
Mhm.
company is less than a year old.
It is a brand in its absolute infancy, operating with the swagger of a heritage fashion house.
So what does this all mean for you, the consumer? Are we just being tricked by a well-funded mirage, or is this fake it till you make it strategy just the new standard for doing business on the internet?
It raises a fascinating philosophical question about the nature of reality in digital commerce. And to answer it, we actually have to revisit Jean Baudrillard.
Oh, the postmodernism guy from earlier.
Yes, but this time focusing on his most famous and perhaps most unsettling concept, simulacra and simulation.
Wait, simulacra, break that down for me, because right now I'm just picturing Neo dodging bullets in the Matrix.
Well, The Matrix is actually heavily inspired by Baudrillard's work.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, the concept of a simulacrum is a copy of something that either no longer has an original or never had an original to begin with. Baudrillard argued that in our hyper-connected digital age, the simulation of reality can actually become more powerful, more tangible, and more influential than the physical reality itself.
So the map replaces the territory.
Exactly. Think about Vivir through this lens. The physical reality of the company is a newly registered small business operating out of Kent.
Right.
But the digital reality, the simulation they have meticulously crafted, is a brand associated with the Museum of Modern Art, the tormented genius of Van Gogh, paparazzi flashes, and massive cultural hype.
And to the teenager scrolling on their phone in another country, the digital reality is the only one they can see.
Exactly.
The simulation is their entire experience of the brand.
The image becomes the reality. Their entire business strategy is fundamentally about taking small signals and stretching them into massive impressions.
Yeah.
They prioritize the perceived vibe, the aesthetic lifestyle visuals, and the cultural associations far above things like long-term brand reputation or detailed product specifications. And it works flawlessly because of how human beings process media.
It makes me think about how we constantly translate the things we see on our screens. Like, a brand puts out a specific vibe, and our brains instantly translate it into a lifestyle.
That translation process is what media theorists call encoding and decoding.
Encoding and decoding.
Yeah, Stuart Hall's representation theory. Media creators encode their messages with very specific meanings, and audiences decode them based on their own cultural backgrounds.
Right.
Vivir meticulously encoded this launch campaign with the visual language of extreme luxury and artistic genius. And because the audience is already fluent in that visual language, they know what MoMA stands for, they know the emotional weight of Van Gogh.
They readily decode the brand as aspirational and premium.
Exactly.
So they aren't actually selling a cotton hoodie at all. They are selling a lifestyle.
Yes.
They're selling the feeling of being cultured and in the know.
Yeah.
And the fact that they are a tiny startup in Kent doesn't even matter, because the simulation they built is so incredibly convincing that it delivers the feeling the consumer wanted in the first place.
The simulation delivers exactly what the consumer is paying for, which is a hit of exclusivity and a boost of cultural capital. In the modern digital economy, that feeling is the actual product.
Oh,
The physical clothing is almost just a souvenir of the digital experience.
that is just, it is completely mind-bending when you pull the curtain back.
It is.
When you really step back and look at the anatomy of this campaign, it is just a series of brilliant, highly calculated psychological levers being pulled one after another.
Yeah.
So, to recap this journey we've been on through these case studies today, Vivir Clothing needed to launch a website. But instead of just posting a basic link, they hijacked the Starry Night to borrow its historical and artistic soul.
Right?
They filmed on the sidewalk outside MoMA with fake paparazzi flashes to manufacture an aura of elite, untouchable prestige.
Yeah.
And then they completely flipped their own "keep it exclusive" slogan to trigger a cognitive glitch and start a viral sharing loop among their followers.
Brilliant move.
They took a basic e-commerce drop and transformed it into a high art cultural event, all while operating as a brand new startup out of Kent.
And for you listening, the real value of breaking down a case study like this is that you now have the tools to spot these invisible marketing strings in your own daily life.
Exactly.
The next time you are scrolling through your social media feeds, you can see how intertextuality is being used to borrow credibility from the past. You can recognize when a brand is projecting a myth of prestige rather than relying on actual history.
Right.
You will understand how your own desire for cultural capital, for status, and for exclusivity is constantly being weaponized to generate hype. Once you see the simulation for what it is and you understand the psychology behind it, you can never unsee it.
It really does permanently change the way you look at your feed. I mean, every advertisement, every sneaker drop, every campaign suddenly looks like a carefully constructed matrix of signs and symbols designed to make you feel a certain way.
It completely changes your perspective.
And looking at how perfectly Vivir executed this strategy, it leaves me with one final lingering question for you to ponder.
Okay.
If a brand, a tiny startup less than a year old, can successfully borrow the cultural weight of a human classic like the Starry Night to sell streetwear, um, what happens when artificial intelligence starts generating original masterpieces, specifically designed and optimized to trigger our deepest cultural nostalgia, just to sell us coffee or shoes?
That is a wild thought.
In the future, where will the art end and the ad begin?